Friday practice in Las Vegas is over and the fastest driver of the day was Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. But what did we learn? Well, in this video I am going to be doing a data analysis from practice. Now let's get into the video. As usual, I'm going to be talking about Aston Martin, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull later on, so stick around for that. The practice in Las Vegas ended up being reduced from 2 1-hour sessions down to just one 90-minute session after FP1 was abandoned very early on. The reason for this was because a loose drain cover came up which destroyed Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. This led to a very long delay before the start of FP2, which took place in front of 0 fans, which I just want to say is terrible for F1 on their first trip to Las Vegas. Because of this, eventually we got a longer FP2, and FP2 saw a huge amount of circuit evolution. At the beginning of the session, you could see the surface was very shiny, and this led to a massive lack of grip. To show the amount of circuit evolution, I've brought up the times of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. This here gives a very good indication to the grip levels at the beginning of the session versus later on. There was around 5 seconds of evolution as the tyre temperature and circuit all came towards the drivers. Alongside this, there was also the amount of confidence that was coming to the drivers as they were doing more and more laps of the circuit. Let's now look at the lap times to see the difference from the first lap to his fastest lap. Here we can really see the difference. The amount of grip and confidence is clear for Leclerc when compared to his first lap. In his first lap, you can see Leclerc is having to slow down more pretty much everywhere, and on the exit of every corner it is taking longer to pick up speed. This is because he just doesn't have the grip in the tyres or on the track. Remember, both these laps were done on soft tyres, but you would never know comparing these laps. Leclerc was able to reach a top speed of 345 km per hour, which goes to show just how immensely fast this circuit is, but he was not even the fastest driver in a straight line. Let's now compare multiple different drivers' fastest laps, and here you can see, which is probably not a huge surprise, that the Williams was by some distance the fastest car in a straight line. He was able to clock a speed of 349 km per hour. Red Bull was surprisingly slow compared to their usual position, but the reason for this is because Red Bull opted to run slightly higher downforce compared to their rivals. McLaren had slow top speed as well, which probably explains a lot about their pace, but we are going to be getting to that very shortly. This top speed, and with the size of the straights in Las Vegas, means that I think going into qualifying that we could see the teams opt to use a slipstream and the tow to try and make sure that their fastest drivers get the best possible qualifying times, which of course means they will get their best possible starting positions. So in the midfield today, what teams were looking good and what teams were not looking so good? Well, one team that seemed to struggle a bit today was the AlphaTauri. In the previous couple of races, AlphaTauri have looked like a completely different team, but so far in Las Vegas, they've started to look a little bit more like the AlphaTauri we've seen from earlier in the year, as Daniel Ricciardo was in 19th place and Yuki Tsunoda was in 17th place. AlphaTauri have got plenty of work to do over one lap, and you can see that when you compare the fastest times of Hülkenberg to Tsunoda. You can see things are only slightly different though. Haas is able to carry more speed through the slow corners compared to the AlphaTauri, which could just be down to right now they have a slightly better balance. You can also see going down the long straights, Haas typically gets better exits, meaning that they can carry more speed all the way down the strip, which is just due to getting better exits. The AlphaTauri does seem to be lacking on exits at the moment, which is going to be an issue in qualifying. When it comes to the longer runs, however, AlphaTauri are looking in a much better position. And you can see that when you look here at the overall times on the hard tyres, Yuki Tsunoda is faster than both Joe and Hülkenberg. So if AlphaTauri can get better setup for one lap, they may find themselves having a much better race. But right now, it is looking unlikely that they will be able to beat Williams to 7th place in the Constructors' Championship. One team in the midfield that actually looked pretty good today, which we should have expected, was Williams. Haas also looked pretty strong, but due to their lack of race pace, I doubt we're going to see them convert what should be a good qualifying position. With Williams though, going into this weekend, they should be looking strong, especially with the amount of the circuit that is flat out. Albon did not quite have the overall time like Hülkenberg, but similar to the AlphaTauris, Williams have much stronger race pace compared to Haas, which you can see here. We are somewhat used to seeing this. I anticipate that in qualifying Albon should get through Q1 without any issues, and we may actually see him give Sargent a tow to try and make sure that we can get both Williams into Q2. Albon has incredible straight line speed, which you can see here, but the Williams is struggling in the slower speed corners. Going into the race, Williams should be confident that they can do some overtaking if they can stick with the competition through the slower speed corners. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. I'm on my way to 5k subs and I would really appreciate it if you help me get there. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about the top 5 teams, starting with Aston Martin. For Aston Martin going into this weekend, I thought it was going to be a bit of a return to form after a brilliant race in Brazil. However, so far I seem to have been proven wrong, as Fernando Alonso had an excellent day as he was third fastest, and at times he was looking like he was in a position to even be the fastest driver of the day. When it comes to the longer runs, I've brought up the times of Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso and Hamilton. And what can we see here? Well, what we see is, whilst they look brilliant compared to the Mercedes, which is a good thing for them, Alonso does lack a little bit of pace in race trim compared to Leclerc and Verstappen. For Aston Martin though, this is still a massive positive. They look right now like they are the third fastest team, and with Sainz taking a grid penalty, it could be very possible that we see Aston Martin once again with a driver on the podium. Teammate Stroll over one lap is lacking pace a little bit, but when it comes to the long runs, he is in good shape as well, like Fernando Alonso. For McLaren, today has been a disaster and there is no other way around it. In practice, they just looked like they were struggling and spent a decent amount of time in the pits early on. As they got out on track, there was a lack of pace, and this was something that, for the first time in a long time, made McLaren look like the McLaren team from the start of the year. To show their lack of pace, I have the times today of Lando Norris and compare it to Fernando Alonso. Even when it looked like they were struggling, they just couldn't get good traction on the exit of corners, and it looked like the car was a handful, even trying to just slow the cars down. Let's take a look at the fastest laps of Norris and Alonso, and what can we see here? The McLaren is just lacking pace in a straight line, and when they get onto throttle, they can't get onto power like the Aston Martin. Remember, they have the same power units here, but there is a clear difference, as McLaren are lacking traction and generally look like they are just struggling for balance right now. For Ferrari, today was a very strong day and they can be very confident going into the race and also qualifying. The car looks very fast, not only over one lap, but in race trim as well, and this could be the race where they take their second win of the season. Charles Leclerc was in dominant form today and was the fastest driver by over half a second from his teammate Carlos Sainz, who was second. Let's look at the times of Sainz and Leclerc. Leclerc typically has slightly higher top speed, but Sainz gets better exits onto the long straights. This tells me that Leclerc was running slightly lower downforce, and that could be the way forward for many teams this weekend. Over the long runs as well, Ferrari looks strong, and almost are comparable to the Red Bulls. This could be a golden opportunity, especially if Red Bull does not qualify as well as Ferrari or even the Aston Martins, because I do think Alonso has got the potential to hold up Verstappen for just a little bit to allow Charles Leclerc to get away in the Grand Prix. For Mercedes, today was another day where they didn't perform brilliantly. The Mercedes are slowly starting to falter when it comes to overall pace, and you can see that here when you look at the pace of Mercedes compared to Ferrari. They are just struggling. They don't have the one lap pace and the long runs look pretty weak. Let's take a look at the fastest lap of Hamilton and Leclerc. Hamilton is backing off sooner than Leclerc and giving up free lap time here. This could be so that he has better exits and also doesn't lock up given the nature of some of the corners, but he is sacrificing free lap time here. They don't quite have the top speed either, so I don't really know what to anticipate from them this weekend. They look right now to be the fourth fastest team so far, and they're pretty lucky that McLaren are struggling at the moment, otherwise they could be the third fastest Mercedes-powered car out there. And finally, for Red Bull, we are starting to see once again that on street circuits, they are a little bit more susceptible to the competition. They don't quite get around the slow speed corners quite as well as Ferrari, which is why they were beaten in qualifying at both Baku and Monza, and once again it looks like they could bite them in qualifying. When you compare the fastest times of Leclerc to Verstappen, you can see where Red Bull right now are struggling. Firstly, they are running more downforce, which leads to them not being quite as fast in a straight line. But it's not just here. When you look at the slow speed corners, you can see also that they're having to slow down more than Ferrari, and they can't carry just as much speed through those slow speed corners. And here they are just losing overall pace. When it comes to race trim though, they are still in great shape, and they definitely will match Ferrari, but over one lap they just don't have a strong pace. I anticipate that they will lower the downforce for qualifying in the race, but that lower downforce will not help them in the slower speed sections where they are really losing time. And this means that they may be even slower in the slow speed sections, which is going to hurt them versus the Ferrari cars and also the Aston Martin cars. So what are my predictions for the race now that we've seen practice? Well, the top midfield driver will still be Alex Albon in my opinion, but what about the top 5? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. P4 will be Carlos Sainz after his grid penalty, because I do anticipate that he will take 10 positions but will still be able to make his way through the field. P3 will be Fernando Alonso. P2 will be Max Verstappen, and for once this season I am going to take a punt and say Charles Leclerc will win the Las Vegas Grand Prix, provided of course his Ferrari power unit makes it through the session. But those are my thoughts. The question is though, what do you guys think? Down below, let me know, and as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.